Today on Rambling About Cars, we've got a crazy powerful SUV. We've got an off-road SUV, brand new. We've got a low-resolution 8-bit SUV that seems to be the talk of the town right now. We've got a Goodwood wrap-up. I guess there were a few crashes this year. Actually, there were quite a few crashes this year. And then we're doing a cheap car challenge that I think everybody wants to tune in on because this is one that's going to apply to everybody, and we can use your help. So let's roll. It's podcast time. I am Christopher Smith, and across the way, my co-host, wonderful person, wonderful human being, Mr. Chris.
Let's not go too far. Let's not.
Okay.
Let's
like 50%.
Overpromise here.
50% human being. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. But yeah, while we are waiting for some people to filter in here, you were saying beforehand you've got a little bit of car stuff going on. Yeah.
I mean, if the car stuff is like cars in the basement,
that counts. Those are they're four wheels. You can move them with your hands.
I mean, let me just kind of bring this to life here, and I'm stalling because I'm having some trouble finding the share screen, the specific window that I want to share.
It's down there at present, buddy.
No, I know where it's at. My dumb computer isn't bringing it up. So I am going to talk a little bit right now about my Mark 6 racing cockpit. This is something that I've been building for a little while. By a little while, I mean probably a couple weeks at this point. And yeah, for some reason, it is not giving me unless.
Okay, well here, let me talk one second.
That's the Chevrolet Traverse.
Yeah, that's not what you wanted. Let me talk a second and you can figure this out. So last weekend, I went so throughout the entire month of July, there is the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix. Ooh. And it is a multitude of events. So they have somewhere downtown in Pittsburgh. So my family, we live in Ohio, not Pennsylvania, and not especially around Pittsburgh. So I don't specifically know where this is at, but they have a car show downtown in Pittsburgh. They have an event called Black Ties and Exhaust Pipes, which is also kind of a fundraiser. And they have two races. They have the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix, which is at Shenley Park, which is generally a golf course that's right near Carnegie Mellon University. And then they also have this event at the Pitt International Raceway, is what I believe it's called. And so I went there for the first time this year. It was a really, really fun event. It's a vintage race. For the first time this year, they actually started doing what they call modern classics, which my dad and I were laughing about because their definition of modern classics are E30 BMWs, 944 turbos, 80s, 911s, basically 30-year cars that are 30 years old rather than 50 years old.
But I've noticed that's kind of the trend as we progress ever further along in years through the automotive world. I'm seeing people still refer to classics as like 60s and earlier, and that's not really shifting. So you have like the classics. And then you have like the modern classics, which is really being lumped into kind of like the 80s and the 90s. And I don't think anybody cares about the 70s, which is kind of sad, right?
The 70s, well, I don't think many people care about 70s American cars. There are a lot of 70s European cars, especially when you talk about BMW, like I was talking about, or Maserati or Porsche or Ferrari. Like, there's a lot to like from Europe in the 70s. Hell, even Ford with like stuff like the Capri or some of the hot escorts they made.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Much
to
Japan
love.
In the 1970s. You start, you get into some of the early Skylines. You get into some of the really cool Toyotas like the Celicas and stuff like that. It's just America in the 70s. You just kind of like. We were trying. It was the first state of like emissions regulations.
There were some wins, though. There were some wins.
There were definitely some wins there. I was just watching. Well, I wasn't just watching that. That's a lie. About 2 months ago, I watched Smokey and the Bandit, and he's got his Trans Am with the 455 HO, and that's just was
the Trans Am
high watermark of muscle cars of the 70s.
I mean, the C3 Corvette, which in my humble opinion is still the best looking Corvette of all time. Of course, that debuted in the late 60s,
You're
but
really wrong there, buddy. But okay.
the C3 is just gorgeous.
Is-
Lots of wins. And hey, while we were talking, I am not like tech terrible. My computer just wasn't showing this, so now it is.
Okay, share away.
So here's a quick look at the Mark 6 racing cockpit. It's the Mark 6 because yes, I've built 5 of these before. I've never built one like this.
Smith, you need a proper emblem to put on these because, again, so I was looking at classic sports cars. So there's, Jannetta or Lotus or Cooper or Devon or like any of these British manufacturers, and they all had, they're Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3. This needs to be the Smith Mark 6, and you need a proper logo on this thing.
The
Should
Smith
be a really
Mark
like cool
6.
stylized S.
Well, I mean,
like
this one is different
at the bottom.
This one, this is still the early stages. It's technically functional at this point, but I mean, I'm going to have a television, a big monitor set up in front of it. The ones I built previous were always designed to be kind of small, to be nestled like in the corner of your living room. Or this is is
one
like
of them all folded up into like almost like a steamer trunk sized, right?
That was the Mark V.
That was the Mark
when
V,
I was in South Dakota, because it sat in the living room and it doubled as sort of a table. But this is just like it's going to be its own thing in its own area. And you're looking at the skeleton. I'm actually going to cover the sides, and I'm trying to decide if I want to make it look like a 1930s Auburn with the pipes on the side.
Oh, wow, you're fancy.
Because this will also be a flight rig.
Right.
I'm thinking about like painting it like gray or silver with the shark mouth on the side, the fake machine guns, the whole shot. But it's technically functional as is. It's got 4x4 construction, 2x4 construction. Pretty sure it'll survive World War III at this point. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I'm happy to get back into. I hesitate to call it sim racing because this seat is a 9-way power adjustable with lumbar, and yes, I do have it hooked up so the power seat functions. So I mean, it's just going to be like a do-all kind of rig. So I'm pretty excited about that. I wanted to share it. There'll be more to come on that, but right now, well, okay, we've got Group FBC, Ted Adam Green, Group FBC. Thank you both for joining us. Mixta, looks like you're a first-time commenter. Thanks for joining us. I forgot to do my promo. Motor1Com Facebook, Motor1Com, Motor1Com Twitter, Motor1 on YouTube. You can catch us live every Wednesday at 7:30. If you're watching now, guess what? You caught us live. But if you catch us after the fact, or if you're listening on many of the audio platforms that we're on, that goes up every Friday, Spotify, Deezer, Amazon, so many that we're on. Catch us live on Wednesdays. Group FBC says, please tell me you've wired those electric seat adjusters in. That would be awesome. Yes. And by wired in, I mean, I got it's a DC system, right, for cars. So I just got me a generic DC power converter from Amazon for like $15. I've got a bunch of old cigarette lighter plugs laying around. So I just found the power and the ground on the seat, wired on the cigarette plug, plugged it in, away we go. And yes, the seat adjusters all work. It's got lumbar. It's not heated seats, so I'm feeling a little rustic.
Very cool. I had additional comments, but I thought it would be best just to move along.
Yeah, speaking of heated seats, we're 10 minutes in and we haven't even talked about a vehicle yet.
We have. I would call your setup a vehicle of its own special sort, but
it doesn't have any wheels, Bruce.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
Well, I take that back. It has one big wheel in the center. Woohoo!
Anyway, so for anyone looking at our lead image for tonight, we started out with the Hyundai Santa Fe, the new Hyundai Santa Fe, because that has both been killing it for Motor One in terms of traffic.
Oh, it's just the talk of the town.
Yep, and it's also one of the new vehicles this week. So we figured we might as well start with that because people apparently love it. We don't know everything about it yet. We will
Yes.
not know that until next month when the full debut happens. But for anyone who regularly watches the show, Hyundai and Kia both love this thing where they show part of the car and then they show another part of the car and then they have their debut, which is it. I have mixed feelings on that. Like, Smith, you had a marketing background, and I could definitely see where from a marketing background you get to excite people multiple times. Like, oh, here's what it looks like on the outside. Oh, here's the tech. Oh, here's the powertrain. But from
My
writing about it,
my marketing background says hell no on that. That's ridiculous. We want
yeah,
to capture the excitement. We want to build on that excitement. You don't want to stretch it out because that frustrates people. From a marketing, I guess from a marketing and a sales perspective, you want to get people excited about this, and then you want them to go buy it right away because they're excited about it. So yeah,
right.
when you do, oh well, here is a look at the interior. I mean, we got to look at the new Mini Cooper's interior today, right? Here's a look at a portion, and then a month later, here's a look at another portion, and then another month later, okay, here's a little bit about the powertrain, and then you'll be able to buy it a year and a half from now. If you want to make people excited about it, make them excited about it, and then give them something to do with that excitement other than they sit there and go, well, gosh, I'd like this now, but I don't want to wait a year and a half, so I guess I'll go get, has commenter Ron H. so astutely points out, a Ford Flex. Because I said this earlier in our team's chat.
You did.
Thank you, Ron, for commenting.
Not the first to say
this is like the best looking Ford Flex I've seen like in a long time. And it's the front, right? It's that front design with the H motif in the headlights, then with that single bar going across. It kind of looks like the Flex, and of course, the Flex was just kind of like a boxy toasterish SUV. And buddy, that's what the Santa Fe is now. I mean, when we described it as low res 8-bit, I mean, this looks like something in an 8-bit Nintendo game almost. It's very square. It's very boxy. There are lots of straight lines.
I will pull up photo. You could do better than this in 8-bit. You could put curves and 8-bit. Like, people say that, and you could be more subtle than this. But yeah, it is a very slab-sided shape. And so I will pull this up real quick once I get it up here. I wrote up a story today talking about how the Hyundai Santa Fe has changed over the generations. And it's really radical once you look at them. The Santa Fe was Hyundai's first crossover in the United States. Like, that's where things start. Eventually, a couple of years later, the Tucson came. About the same time, the Hyundai Veracruz came. If anyone remembers that, I'm not shocked if you don't remember that because it didn't last very long.
Remember.
But it started out very much as kind of a copy is unfair, but in the guise of a CRV or a Toyota RAV4 of its time. There were a lot of similarities there. And as the generations went on, Hyundai established its own design language, especially with the third generation, and then did it even better with the fourth generation. And now we have a vehicle that looks nothing like anything that came before.
Yeah, it's not like, hey, we're gonna build off the previous generation. No, it's just like, crap, I lost my protractor. I guess I'm working with a ruler today. And for what it's worth, I dig it. I love it. It looks like nothing else out there, but it's not distinguishing itself through some crazy, shocking, radical style. Just at an age where everybody has just humongous grills with little tiny lights, or maybe they're separating the lights and they're going out with all of these contrasting angles and just very busy design work. This just kind of gets the job done. It looks nice and straightforward, and I kind of dig it. Dig it.
So we have talked about the Hyundai Pony concept, a little bit ago, and how it's very much retro 80s. And I get some of that same Not the same aesthetic, certainly, because the Hyundai Pony concept is like super, super angular, but it's almost like they looked back to SUVs of the 1980s when they came up with this. Like I see a little bit of like Chevy Blazer, a little Ford Bronco 2 when I look at something like this.
Bronco
You
too.
know where
That's
I'm coming from?
yeah, exactly. And you're not wrong. The first thing I thought when I saw it was, okay, I feel like Hyundai is maybe jumping onto the '80s bandwagon here a little bit.
Well, they
Because
already did though with the
I
Pony.
right,
They've done
right,
that
but that's a
already, and now they're
concept.
just taking it into a different segment.
But think about also what we've seen recently with the Sonata. I mean, the
Mhm.
Sonata, the new Sonata, it is much more proportioned and kind of simplified like this, and I think it works. And I think maybe Hyundai is realizing, hey, we can do these sort of retro styles from the '80s, and nobody else is really doing it. Everybody's going with the really small headlights, the large grills, wild contrasting components, very busy designs like I was saying earlier. And I mean, think about cars from the '80s. They're just kind of angular and rather simple and straightforward, and they also managed to, because I mean, and this is just a personal take
Mhm.
from me. I think the '70s and the '80s are arguably one of the greatest periods in the history of the automobile, because that's really the beginning of the digital era. That's when we start to see
Okay.
computer control coming into vehicles, early computer control, but that's where it started. And when you talk about the fuel crisis and the advent of emissions and these
Mhm.
regulations coming, people like to talk down about that, but that forced automakers to rethink what they're doing. And that thought process has led us to today, where we have cars that are actually really good on emissions and get decent fuel economy and still make 500 and 600 horsepower without us even really blinking about it. So I consider that
Right.
era to be a very pivotal moment. And I think Hyundai is really the only automaker right now that say, well, maybe we can do a little bit from that. Maybe we can pay tribute to that era with some of our designs. And it's certainly something that nobody else is doing. And I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah, I disagree with you in some parts. I don't know how much I am a child of the '80s, certainly. I don't know how much that those designs were great, so to speak, but there were beautiful things in them, and I
Oh, sure.
think that automakers now are taking elements from there and applying them to modern technology and coming up with something that was far better than you could have ever, ever, ever had at that time.
Oh,
And
for
what I
sure.
mean by that is that if you look at this Hyundai, it has those like H-shaped headlights, which are arguably, and this is my opinion, better than any badge you could ever have, because you look at those running lights and you're like, oh, it's a big H. What automaker could that be that starts with an H? The only one's Hyundai, so of course it's a Hyundai. Like that is so clever to me from a branding perspective, and it
Hmm.
also has this retro modern look to it, and you get that throughout this entire vehicle. Like I was saying, that this big upright kind of muscular shape. And I just wrote up the story about previous generations, and they had very smooth styling. They had very even the first gen Santa Fe had very sculpted smooth styling, and with some cladding to kind of make it a
Hmm.
little bit rugged. But this is the first one that looked like a proper off-roader, and it feels like, to me at least, that it's evoking the Blazer of the era, a little bit of the Cherokee of the era, things like that, but with these modern touches layered on top of that. And I agree with you, though. Hyundai seems to be the only automaker that's really tapping into that right now. And I
Yeah.
think it's why we kind of gravitate towards that because so many of the auto journalists these days, we were born in the 80s, we grew up throughout the 90s, so we had this kind of, we saw those used cars on the road because used cars have always been on the road, but then new cars are also out there, and now we are in our late 30s, 40s, whatever, and we're gravitating back to that, and Hyundai is interpreting those styles in a very modern way.
Well, I mean, think about the retro craze through that really started sort of there in the mid '90s through the
Yep.
late '90s and through the 2000s, where you're looking back to sort of that muscle car era of the '60s and even to the '50s to
Not
some
just muscle
degree.
car, you had New Beetle, you had Mini,
Yep,
you had Ford Thunderbird, you had
yep.
I'm
And
forgetting
those
some.
generally designs that were what they were going back to the '60s and the '50s,
Yep.
and that was hitting, and the retro thing just kind of faltered a little bit, or it didn't really move much in any direction. Now I feel like maybe Hyundai is trying to move it towards the '80s, to be honest. And
Yeah.
will it work? I mean, we'll see. As people from our generation are moving along in years, theoretically they're more financially able to make bigger purchases. We'll see how it goes.
Yep.
Let me address a question here, or a comment from Group FBC, because
Please.
I think it's an astute observation here. Apart from the rear, it looks great, and I say that as one of the few detractors
Yeah,
who
that's
don't like the EV9. Let's talk about the rear for a moment, because it does seem a little awkward with the tail light horizontal and way down low.
let me find a good is that a
I
good
mean,
shot, or do we like that one better to talk about?
I mean,
One or two.
I think both work. Um,
I kind of like this one better.
I mean,
So let's
we
leave
get
it there.
it allows us to get the H motif, because we have a nice big horizontal light. But I mean, you can still do that with vertically oriented lights. Maybe it's just because we expect to see vertical lights, going up at the corners instead of a big horizontal strip at the back. I mean, my initial reaction was, "Ooh, I don't really like that." Maybe it's something that will grow on me over time. I don't know, but I would have to agree. It seems to be at odds with the rest of the vehicle. But like I said, it
I
could just
agree.
be because we're used to seeing the lights going vertical. I remember when what was it? Probably I think the Chevy Lumina APV when that first came out and the lights were mounted way up high. That looked awkward as hell, but I mean, you get used to it over time. I mean, I don't know if there are any Dustbuster fans out there, but I mean that's what they called it back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Ted Adam Green, thanks for commenting. Nostalgia is always moving forward to be only 20 to 40 years in the past. I agree.
No,
But
it totally is.
I also like I was saying, why aren't we seeing other automakers taking these steps that Hyundai is taking now? If we're working nostalgia 20 to 40 years in the past, and maybe this is going to give automakers another pause to say, well, maybe there is something here.
Well, I think there always has to be a first mover, though. That think about it. The Volkswagen New Beetle, unless I'm mistaken, was kind of the first to do that retro modern thing in the late 1990s. And then from there, we saw the Mini Cooper, the Ford Thunderbird, the Audi TT. We saw a bunch. Someone has to do it
PT
first.
Cruiser,
PT
Chevy,
Cruiser,
the
HHR,
SSR,
and
the,
SSR.
the
Yeah,
HHR. So yeah, I mean, within a span of just really a handful of years, boom, here came all of these retro things. But if you think about it, Bruce, we started seeing it on the auto show circuit.
true.
Arguably going back even to like the late '80s, I think, with the Viper concept. Is that when it came out? The late '80s, and everybody said,
89? I
"Ooh,
think it was
that's like
89.
that's like a modern Shelby Cobra,"
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
that sort of kicked things off. So, I mean,
Yeah.
interesting discussion. We've managed to go almost a half hour at this point
I mean, I think
on
it's
one vehicle, but I think it's worth. I mean, it's worth a
totally.
discussion because
I think it's
everybody's
completely
talking about it
valid.
right now.
Yeah,
I wish
because it's this. it's an interesting blend of retro and
Mhm,
modern, and it's doing it super well.
mhm.
And it's a vehicle that clearly we can see from traffic people that are interested in.
Now, we didn't talk much about the interior. As we said, Hyundai they debuted the design.
Yes.
So we don't have any stats on the interior, but we
There was
do
a
get a
single interior photo.
yeah, we get a look at the interior where we see a nice big digital screen, stretching from the driver's side over into
Yep.
the middle of the vehicle. We see a combination of obviously capacitive, just like touch screen controls and analog controls. So that's on a personal level, that's nice to see. I think automakers are starting to realize that not everybody really wants the minimalist, relegate everything to a touchscreen layout,
Yep.
and
I want to
I
call
think
out
it's in
Group
a sweet point.
FBC here only because he is echoing something my dad told me over the weekend. He says, as a 48-year-old, I'm horrified when designs of my teenage years become retro inspiration. Where's my walking frame? My dad told me he saw a t-shirt and he said, he almost bought it. He said, when did everyone around me become old? And it's
You just
exactly
got
the
to
same.
roll with it. You got to roll with it.
Yeah,
If Back to the Future, and because I mean everybody knows Back to the Future, and I think most people
I
love
should
it.
hope
If
so. If you
if
don't,
Back to the
I don't know why you're
Future was
watching.
made today, Marty McFly would travel back to 1993.
Yes.
And if we traveled back to 1993 right now, would we look out of place? No. Would things be that much different? I mean, I remember
I
1993,
mean,
so
depending on the
I
date, I
don't
would be
know.
8 or 9 years old. I'd
I
be
mean, I don't
pretty
think it would be that
pretty
much
good
different.
stuff.
I mean,
Yeah.
not the way it was portrayed in the movie, where it's like, oh my gosh, who's this guy from the future that looks completely? Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Hyundai
Smith,
Santa Fe. We do have some others to talk about, though.
we do. I think we got too depressing. We were both fun and depressing about the Santa Fe. I think we got to talk about some other vehicles
Wah,
though,
wah.
because we talked about it for half an hour. And honestly, I think I still have more to say about it, but I'm not going to because I know we need to talk about other subjects.
Well, you want to
Um,
jump over to the vehicle that I inadvertently showed everybody right at the beginning, the Chevrolet, the new Chevrolet Traverse.
we can certainly do that. I can do
Let's
that
jump
right
over to the
now.
Traverse because this was kind of a surprise. We didn't really have much in the way of a heads up. I mean, we
I
knew,
would say
uh,
it's yeah, big surprise.
yeah, I mean, we knew an updated model was coming. We had seen spy photos, so I mean, we had some idea. But yeah, I mean, this debuted just in the last few days. It's the 2024 model, and I think the big news. Well, I mean, there are a couple noteworthy items here. One, there's now a Z71 version that's brand new.
Mhm.
Um, in spy photos, we'd seen versions with red tow hooks, on the front sticking out, and I think we
Sure.
theorized at that point that that maybe that's a new active model because active is a trim level on some other Chevrolet products. But nope, this is a Z71, which in my mind kind of elevates it a little bit further than just an active where okay this isn't necessarily just a trim level with some badging and some black trim, and it's not.
Right. I mean,
um
you can see from these it sits a little bit higher. It's
yep,
got obviously the red tow hooks you just mentioned. It's a little bit more aggressive. It's it
yep.
I wouldn't call this a full-on off-roader. I think I would be, that I would be careful talking about that. But I think you could call it a soft roader,
Oh,
right?
I think it goes a little bit beyond soft rudder. It's got a 1 inch
Okay.
lift. It's got a 1 inch lift, all terrain tires. It's got a twin clutch system, all wheel drive. It has unique suspension tuning, dampers. So I mean, they're not just lifting it up a little bit and slapping a badge on. They are doing
Sure.
a
Yeah.
little bit more with it. I mean, are you going to take it to Moab? No, probably
No,
not.
I guess,
But
you know,
would I be concerned? I mean, like getting off the beaten path. I mean, not really, as long as you're not doing anything crazy.
I mean,
Um,
isn't that what a soft rotor is though? That, you're not.
in my mind, a soft rotor is, well, okay, you can take it down dirt roads or maybe, head down some 2-track trails with it.
Okay. Okay,
I
fair
would
enough.
feel, I mean, just my opinion. I would feel like, I mean, Z71 with the suspension tuning, with the extra height, they're they're giving you the means to really get out and explore a little bit if you want to.
Fair enough.
I like,
Okay.
but are you going to rock crawl? No,
No.
no, you're not going to rock crawl.
No.
So yeah, there's the new Z71. The other noteworthy item here that applies to all the 2024 models, the new engine, the 2.5 liter turbo 4 that we had heard about, that we had heard through the grapevine. Okay, this is basically a derivative of the 2.7 that General Motors is developing. Here it is. It's the 2.5 liter, horsepower, 315, 317 pound-feet of torque. By comparison, the 3.6 liter V6 for the current model, 310 horsepower. So a little bit smaller, a little bit of boost, a little bit more power. It's an 8-speed automatic transmission driving the front wheels in just the standard mode. You get a maximum towing capacity of 5,000 pounds. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, that's
Which is not a lot, but that's enough to tow a small
Mhm.
trailer, maybe a jet ski or something,
Yeah,
that's
you can tow a fair
enough
amount.
for a lot of people.
Right. Well, I mean, 5,000 pounds, you could tow like a smaller, medium-sized car. I mean, if you have a fairly lightweight
Sure.
aluminum trailer,
Exactly. Yeah, it
you know,
depends on your
30,
trailer.
3,500, 4,000 pound car, 1,000 pound trailer. So I mean, you can do some towing there. Um, Trim levels, you've got the LS, the LT, you know about those. The RS is back, and then of course you have the Z71. We don't have any pricing information available yet. That will be available closer to its on sale date, which won't be until early 2024. So we still have a little bit to wait before you can get it. I can tell you right now, the current Traverse starts at 35.9. The RS goes up to 46.4. So we're probably going to be a little bit more than that because obviously, I mean, it's it's a pretty substantial update, especially inside. Can we talk a little bit about the interior, Bruce?
Yeah, yeah, I'm here for it. Yeah, it's
I
much
mean,
nicer than the previous model, like significantly nicer.
right. 17.7-inch screen. It's 75% larger than the outgoing model. There's an 11-inch display for the driver. And really, it's much like what we've seen in other recent Chevrolet debuts. I'm thinking of the Trailblazer. What else that debuted this year so far? The Trax? It's been a minute since we were
Yeah.
talking about it, but they all have that similar
Yes.
styling where they get rid
Well,
of
we had the
the
new Buick
vertically.
Encore or Encore GX, one or the
Mhm.
other. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they get rid of the vertically oriented climate controls with the smaller square screen in the middle, and they just have that larger screen kind of
Mhm.
swooping in. It's a very handsome upgrade. We're seeing it across well at this point, pretty much all of the new Chevrolet SUVs that are coming up. So definitely an upgrade there. It'll be available with Super Cruise. Of course, it's got uh, it's got all various driving modes. The Z71 gives you some new driving modes.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's updated as well, and it doesn't look bad. It's compared to the Santa Fe we were just talking about. This is kind of what I'm talking about with lots, busy design, lots of contrasting angles
Yeah.
going on. Look at the taillights kind of going every which way. You've got the little
Yep.
notch there in the side, which is there on that C pillar, which is very much a Chevrolet Traverse design feature at this point. I think they've gotten better with the front end designs. I haven't been a huge fan of Chevrolet front ends for a while now, but I think they're going in the right direction. So yeah, coming 2024 to off-roading areas near you.
Light off-roading.
Light off-roading. Okay, Bruce. Come on. Couldn't you imagine jumping in there with Cooper and just, heading down by the lake for some fishing?
But yeah, by the lakes nearby me, yeah, I could totally do that. By
the one in the city park where you just park and
exactly, yeah, I could
yeah.
do that, no problem. There's a nice big bridge. Yeah, I could get there, no problem there. Anyway, let's talk about one other new vehicle this week, and then we'll talk about some Goodwood stuff and some other stuff. And that is about the newly debuted, the GLC 63E Performance.
It's a
And
mouthful.
so it's definitely a mouthful. And so these are the new hot versions of the GLC, and they have a ton of power. They have a true, like, just lots of power, especially when you find out what engine is in them. They have a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with electric assistance, making 671 horsepower and 752 pound-feet of torque.
And of course, I mean,
Which
this is the same setup we've seen in other AMG vehicles, and
it
it's
is, but every time I see those numbers, it's absurd. The engine by itself, a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder without the electric assistance. We're gonna put the motors to the side. 469 horsepower, 402 pound-feet of torque. That's just from a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. Those
they're
are insane numbers. Like, just
they're
by
getting the most out
itself.
of it. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, if we jump back to like the Group B era of the 80s, I mean, I think the Turbo 4s on those cars, mind you, these were the race cars, were making
right.
like 500 horsepower thereabouts. So I mean, it's definitely doable. Hopefully, these modern engines have a little bit more longevity to them versus the racing
Well,
engines,
I
because
assume that's just
that is a
Mercedes
lot.
selling them
Yep,
with a warranty that they do, but
that is a
yeah.
lot of power for a 4-cylinder. And then of course you have, I
And a
think, what is it,
2-liter
200?
4-cylinder, not
Yeah,
like,
not
it is it's
a big four.
yeah. I've got an Outback. The engine in that is bigger than in this car. Like,
Hmm.
so the fact that with the electric assistance, it's making I'm going to say it again, 671 horsepower,
Yep,
752 pound-feet of torque
all
for a
combined,
4-cylinder.
0 to 60 is
Just
3.4
crazy.
seconds. Top speed 171 miles an hour. I believe that 0 to 60 number is enough to put this into the top 20 fastest SUVs that you can get right now.
I'm
Um,
pretty sure
we
you're right.
don't,
You
I
take care of that list, so
and yep, I got to update the list. And again, we don't have any pricing available for this. That'll be announced later. Um, there's the 9-speed auto with with Mercedes multi clutch transmission, rear axle steering, upgraded suspension. I mean, AMG, you know the drill there.
and
Um,
the thing is though, you look at this vehicle, especially in the photographs, that it doesn't look particularly aggressive. Like, I'm
nope.
not going to call it a sleeper. Any vehicle like this, you can't really, it doesn't quite fit into that mold, but it doesn't look like a vehicle pushing as much power as it actually has.
Mhm.
You could pretend that this is a crossover with kind of a sporty body kit on it. And then, someone's next to you on the freeway and they put the pedal down and they just rocket past you because they have that insane amount of power. And so, I guess if you are in a situation, you are I guess a small couple making a lot of money. We don't have pricing. I believe I'm correct in that. We don't have
Correct.
pricing. Let me double
Correct.
check. Yeah, we don't have pricing. Obviously, a vehicle of this type of performance is going to cost a lot,
Mhm.
but you know, you could have something like this and just have gobs and gobs of performance and kind of be, anonymous on the road most of the time until you put your pedal down.
So I mean, and let me just bring up this comment here from My Life as Legendary. Thanks for joining us and for listening here. New Mercedes-AMG GLC 63 SE Performance is a home run. This is a monster of an SUV that is more powerful than an XM or Lamborghini Urus. I'm glad you mentioned that, because Bruce, this XM or Urus, what are you choosing?
Whew.
I think I'm choosing this just because I feel like it's going to be just I think it would be a better vehicle to suit what I would want to use it for. And at the end of the day, it's an SUV. Yes, you could do that in an XM, but I don't think I'm ever going to warm up to the XM styling. The Urus, I just feel like would draw too much attention. And
Yes. So
and if and this is an SUV, this is something that I'll be driving by myself, but also with my family. I'll be doing errands.
yeah,
I don't necessarily want attention all of the time. I can go home
exactly.
and get the fun car if I want to go out and have some attention. Um, and yeah, I mean, what's your take on that?
No, I think it's a very good argument. So again, I agree with you. I think Urus is out immediately because it's going to draw too much attention. I would want, and this is going to be the most absurd sentence ever. I would be curious about the amount of space in the back seat between the XM and the GLC. From what I suspect, the XM might have a hair more. And because I have a family with a dog and who I need to transport said dog, I would want the larger back seat, and maybe I would go with the XM just because of that, because I am a ruined person and I want to keep my dog comfortable, because that's a terrible decision, but that's the decision I'm going to make. Um, but yeah, so maybe XM, but GLC's seems really compelling of that group. Like
Well, let me
they're
ask
all
another.
competitive in power. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just say let me ask another hypothetical question here because
Yeah,
I think this is something that might apply better to an AMG GLC versus like an XM or Urus. And I think both of those would draw more attention than this.
I see.
Mercedes, I think Mercedes is good at just keeping it dialed down here while still offering ridiculous amounts of power. So,
And that's the thing. So I think I know where you're going with this, but let me give my point is that
mhm.
the GLC is going, it's odd because it's a Mercedes Benz. So how anonymous can a Mercedes Benz be on the road? But if you look at this, it doesn't look particularly more aggressive than other trims of the GLC. You don't look at this and say, "Oh my god, it's the top end GLC. That guy spent who knows how much money on it." It looks like a sporty GLC, but it doesn't look like a top of the line vehicle that is going to compete against a Urus or an XM or something like that. And so it would make me kind of choose that because I don't consider myself a flashy guy. I don't want to be noticed when I'm on the road. And so, yeah, I think there's an argument to this one.
I mean, I don't know exactly how much the new AMG GLC is going to cost. I mean, it'll be
Yeah,
fairly
none of
pricey.
us do.
Um,
Nope.
but because it feels like it could be a pretty acceptable dual crazy performance vehicle without drawing a lot of attention, do you buy one of these with the whole amount of cash that you can afford?
Sure.
Or do you buy a far less expensive, more modest SUV that will perform the same or better functions as an SUV and then buy a second performance vehicle?
Oh, well, that's an easy question, at least for me. But l- tell tell me your answer to that question first, because I definitely know
Well,
what I would say.
I don't know because I mean, obviously, you're going to
No,
get a
you
little.
do.
You're going to get a little more. No, I honestly don't. You're going to get a little
No,
bit
Smith,
more
you
hard
own how
edge
many
performance.
shows do you own?
No, no, we're not talking about. We're talking like four-figure cars there versus
No, no,
six-figure
no, no,
cars.
no. It's no, but it's the same
I
thing.
own I own three cars right now,
Yeah,
and one doesn't run that I need to
yeah,
work on. It's a project car. One I bought because yeah, it can be a fun car, but it's also functional as just a regular kind of driver. And then I bought one that's just more functional, has a daily driver for more people and hauling more things.
sure.
But if I could combine two of those into one fantastic vehicle versus
No,
splitting it up a little bit.
you wouldn't though, because if you have the room. Uh, and I'm going to go off on a rant here, and people can
Uh-oh.
agree or disagree with
Here
me.
we go.
If you have the room, and that is the major thing. Like my wife and I are lucky enough to own 3 cars, and they're not 3 performance cars. I own a 2006 Mini Cooper, I own a 2012 Subaru Outback, and I own a 2022 Subaru Outback. The you know, and the '06 Mini Cooper has become our fun car. And it's not a fast car by any one stretch of the imagination, but putting down the windows on that and driving it around is exciting and it feels good. It's very much it's what I expect because I haven't driven one. People who have driven a first gen or second gen Miata feel like that, you put down, you still get that like wind in your hair feeling, you still get that excited feeling, you run it out to the red line, but you're not breaking any laws once you hit the red line in first or second or third gear. Maybe in fourth gear, you might be starting to do some legal speeds, but it's a small enough engine that you can ring it out and you can have fun. And it's perfect for that. And so that's why it's different is that a vehicle like this with, 670 horsepower, you're doing illegal speeds kind of sort of, I'm not going to say immediately, but quickly versus, a fun car. Say you have a Miata, say you have my uncle has a Pontiac Solstice or, things like that. Vehicles that are really engaging and fun, but have small engines that aren't particularly, quick. Um, and so, yeah, I don't think it's quite the same thing.
Counterpoint. Have you ever
Go
been
for
out
it.
have you ever been out anywhere in the Subaru and think, "Oh, I wish I had the Mini right now." Or have you ever been out anywhere in the Mini and think, "Oh, I wish I had the Subaru right now?"
Yes to both. Yep, totally.
So,
Yes to both.
so I mean, right now, I'm looking at Mercedes website. Now, keep in mind, this is 2023 AMG GLC 43 Coupe.
Right.
Okay, this is the current model is the 43. We're talking about the new 63
Yep.
SE Performance. It's going to be a lot more than this. I'm looking at a price for the 2023 GLC 43 Coupe,
Uh-huh.
68,200 base price.
That's a lot of
So
money.
we know the new GLC 63 is going to be a fair amount more than that.
Yeah.
So, do you buy a fairly basic humdrum $30,000 or $35,000 SUV? And at that price, I mean, you'll find one that's all right, but it won't have a lot of frills. And then do you try to find another new exciting performance car for 60 grand? What are you going to buy 60 grand brand new with that kind of power? You're probably not. You can probably go on the used market and find a Hellcat,
Yeah.
or you combine those both. And now keep in mind, I don't know the price of them. I'm just estimating probably
No,
somewhere
no, no,
maybe
no.
around
Yeah, no.
100 or a little bit more. So,
Yeah.
I mean that's what I'm saying. You would have the one vehicle with crazy power that would have all the capabilities. Would it be the perfect SUV?
No.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
Would it be the
And it's not going to
perfect
be the
performance
perfect
vehicle?
performance car. Exactly. No. Yeah.
But where are you going to enjoy that much performance except at a track? Are you taking it to the track? I would love to go to a track if I had one close by. So I mean, interesting
No.
point, and I think it's a point that we need to hear from all of the ramblers on. Email
No.
us podcast at motor1.com.
No,
There you
but
go.
dude, I want to give my answer to this, and then anyone can comment. And I would love to see emails about this. But you're absolutely right. Is that it's going to depend on everyone's life situation,
Yep.
and some people have so I am in this situation is that I have wanted to have a different like fun car, but I don't have the space for it. So I live with my Mini and the Subaru and up. You know, is that you have a limited amount of space and you have a limited amount of funds, and you have to fit those two things together. And so maybe a lot of people have space for two vehicles, and a GLC 63 with 670 horsepower and that would be perfect. That would do everything that you needed. But for other people, they might might want something more engaging or more whatever, and that's fine too. But yeah,
Well, this is interesting to me because I've always been the mindset, and as you astutely pointed out, just have separate. Have your SUV, have your front car. This makes me think, oh, maybe both. So let us know.
Yeah.
Podcast at motor1.com. One crazy powerful AMG GLC 63S e-performance. I almost had it in one breath. Or a more modest SUV and then a dedicated front car. Email us, podcast@motor1.com. We want to talk about it next week. We need your help. Whew, that's the new vehicles. But how about all of those crashes at Goodwood this past weekend?
Yeah, we're going to have to go through these pretty quickly because, Smith, you and I talked about those, 3 cars for 50 minutes? You and I had a lot of
we had
time tonight.
We had a lot to say on that. We had a lot to say, but yeah. So this past weekend, obviously, Goodwood Festival of Speed. We had a couple Motor One people there. Editor in chief Seth Mearsma, senior editor Brett Evans were both there. And at least with Brett's case, one of the crashes. I think this was on Thursday. I think this was Thursday.
Which one are we talking about? Sorry,
just in the beginning. Probably the scariest one of the weekend that fortunately one person was hurt slightly. They went right back to watching. There was the Mark I
Jaguar
that was going up the hill, came around the second corner and lost the left rear wheel. And it was right there at that main spectator area. And the wheel took a rather untimely bounce. I mean, it came off. And of course, it comes off. The car immediately starts to slow down. The wheel's going through the grass, passing the car, bouncing along. And they've got hay bales up there. But the wheel just took a very untimely bounce where it managed to bounce up on top of the hay bales. And then from there, the wheel bounced into the crowd. And it was kind of a scary moment because I mean, you could see it went into the crowd. You saw people kind of ducking, bobbing, and weaving. And since this was live, they immediately switched their camera feed. And it's like, ooh, what happened there? And Motor One senior editor Brett Evans was there. Managed to even talk to some of the spectators. Fortunately, as I understand, there was a person that was just looked at. That the tire did hit him, but was just able to go right back to watching. But that was, I think that's probably the scariest of the incidents, just because of the potential for
certainly
injury in the crowd.
I mean, we've seen that in motorsports before. That's why they have the tethers on a lot of open wheel cars now, IndyCar, Formula One, stuff like that. Is that wheels kind of bounce with chaos, that they can take a weird bounce and go in a weird direction, and it can go in a direction that you're not even predicting it's going to go, and bad things happen because a wheel weighs 15, 20 pounds, depending on the wheel. That's force equals mass times acceleration. That can be a lot of force hitting a person, depending on things.
Oh yeah, it can be scary, and that was a scary moment, and we're super glad that everybody was okay. But that wasn't even the first crash. There was the Hyundai RN22E. That's if you remember from last year, that's the concept that Hyundai hasn't said is the Ioniq 6N, but it's got an Ioniq 6 body, and they're using it as really just a test bed for electric performance. And they had the concept here at Goodwood. Now, mind you, the concept debuted last year. It's almost I think a year old at this point. So they certainly had plenty of time to go through it, to get used to it. And it got down to that hard left-hander, and it just sailed straight right into the hay bales. Again, everybody in the car, I think there were 2 people in the car. They were okay. They exited the vehicle. You could see that on camera. But I'll give them credit. The camera was mounted like dead nut square to where the car came into the corner. I don't know if there was a camera person there or if it's remotely operated. If there's a camera person behind that, bravo, because you have far more courage than I would have, unless they just left the camera running and jumped the hell out of the way, because the car was like centered perfectly in that shot. And I mean, I did contact Hyundai actually shortly after that crash happened just to see, okay, just to try to confirm everybody was okay. And yeah, everybody's okay. To see what kind of damage was done to the car, because we never really got a good look at it. You could see plenty of pieces in the grass where it went through the hay, and it came to a rather abrupt stop in a hurry. I did finally hear back, and they said, "Hey, we're taking it into the shop. We're going to check it all out. Whether or not it comes back, honestly, don't know. It's the RN22 concept, so it is a one-off concept. I imagine that was a very, very expensive incident there at Goodwood, and yeah, that was all. In fact, that was, I think, the morning, morning Eastern time, later in the day across the pond when the action was taking place. But that was fairly early on in the weekend, and yeah, and then of course,
quick,
yep.
I was going to throw up the AMG GT Coupe here, which had kind of maybe the most embarrassing crash of the weekend. Just because
it was so embarrassing. Just doing donuts in one of the areas, where people do donuts, and
right,
just kind of decides to not do donuts and drive straight up into the
and
berm.
There it is.
Oink. Oh, I mean, I don't know. I mean, was any damage even done? I mean, if anything, just maybe a little bit of damage underneath.
No, it doesn't see. It just it's funny to see a vehicle like that, especially a pre-production vehicle like that is just has a funny accident like that, because it's a bit of driver error, but you can also see it seems like the electronics intervene, like, because you can see it like it doesn't want to do it necessarily, and then things happen.
Yeah. And I mean, I can just imagine the crowd going, "Oh,
yeah."
I mean, you can almost hear it. How about what's there were several crashes.
Yeah.
Was it the it was the Porsche 911, the GT1 crash. That was it sort of wasn't a crash. I mean, the car contacted the hay bale. But I love the fact that, okay, I mean this is the 911 GT1, so I mean it's got the big wing on the back. It's a full on race car, right? Goes through the hard left-hander, hits the hay bales, rips the rear wing off. The driver's like lifts for like a second, and then it's just like back on it and just keeps going. I personally love that one. Yeah, damage done to the car, but it's like, we still got power. We still have steering. We still got brakes. We're finishing this run, man.
Wings? We don't need those stinking wings.
And I mean, now back in the older rally days, and I mean, I guess it's still applicable today in some areas. If you're on a stage and the rally car goes by, crashes, and loses a part, you got a souvenir. I don't know if anybody has. I don't know if anybody has a big Porsche wing as a souvenir, because I mean it's just track officials there along the track.
Well, you can see the track official there. He's like, I got it. You need it. Oh well.
Coming to pick it up, put it in the trailer with the rest of the damaged parts. So yeah. And of course, was it Saturday that the racing was shut down completely because of
Saturday was canceled due to bad weather. Yes.
Yeah, and that's the first time that's happened in ever. Yeah. So I mean, it's certainly a dynamic Goodwood. I had a long weekend, but I was still able to catch a little bit of it. I was off Friday and Monday, so I was still able to catch a little bit of the action. Very dynamic, exciting weekend, and of course, I was about to say the fastest car, the McLaren Solus.
Yep, I put this up. Well, obviously,
as long as we don't get hit with a copyright thing, Bruce. Just we want to be careful on that.
We've already put so many videos.
It's Goodwood.
So.
It's Goodwood. So I mean, just show us a few seconds here.
I'm trying to. It's loading, as you can see. Maybe it's not gonna
But
work
yeah,
with me
but
here.
McLaren Solus GT, its time was what, 40? I'm trying to spitball off the top of my head here.
48? Was it 48?
I mean, it certainly wasn't as quick last year, but the production version of the McMurtry ran, but they didn't time it because it was just an exhibition run.
And so I pitched this as a story, and it did not get put up as a story, but I timed it just with my phone, and it looked like and this is pure estimation from me pressing start when it started on my phone and pressing stop when it went through the line. It looked like the time was 39.5 ish. To put that in perspective, the McLaren Solus did it in 45.34. So 39.5 is quick. It would be a bit quicker than that, but 39.5 would also not be quick enough to set a new course record. So yeah.
Yeah, but can we give a shout out for Travis Pastrana in
Of course we
the
can.
in the family Huckster, the Subaru GL wagon that only looks like a Subaru GL wagon because it's a crazy Gymkhana machine underneath. He was second overall, first in class, heroic run. That car was built for Gymkhana, and then they realized, oh, it's actually kind of fast too. And it's crazy fast. It's ridiculous fast. Yeah, his time, what is it? 46.38 seconds up the hill. I love this list. Let's just take a look at this top 10, okay?
Sure.
Ferrari, McLaren, Porsche, Nissan Skyline, Chrysler Viper, Rimac, Ford Puma WRC, Ferrari 488, Porsche 911 GT2 Club Sport, and a Subaru GL.
Yeah. Which is not, let's be honest,
love
it's not really a Subaru GL. It looks like a Subaru GL, but nothing. I think like the badges might be the only bits that came from the Subaru GL, but that's no knocking Travis Pastrana as a driver, because clearly he's faster than all of these other guys. He's faster than a 1975 Formula One car. He's faster than a modern 911 GT3 car. He's faster than a Ramatz Navara, a modern WRC car. That the family Huckster can haul the family with guster.
It can at that. But yeah, I mean, that's just a quick summary of Goodwood. We have all kinds of content at motor1.com. A bunch of the runs, some of the crashes, preview that's actually over now, but I guess at this point it would be a review of all the new cars that debuted, list of the fastest cars that ran up there. Go to motor1.com, check all of that out. We'll put some links here in the YouTube description. I think now, Bruce, if it's okay with you and all of the ramblers out there,
yes, sir.
Friend of mine in South Dakota posted a message. It's got a young son ready to drive, young driver, new driver, needing a car. And I said, you know what? I need to turn this into a cheap car challenge. One, because I want to help you out. Two, I think this is one that can apply to just about everybody out there. I mean, especially if you have young drivers needing a car. And he has some pretty specific points here. $3,500 or less, 160,000 miles or less, somewhere close by. And he's in Rapid City, South Dakota, where I used to live. And I know from experience, close by means Rapid City, South Dakota. You're not gonna. I take that back. I mean, Sturgis is decent size. Spearfish is decent size. So if you're in a 100-mile radius, you're pretty good. And he's legitimately looking for help here. So I said, Bruce, how about we do up just do some little searching here in the area. We'll use these parameters as our benchmark for a cheap car challenge, with also the idea that, okay, this is a young driver. It needs to be something that's not necessarily awesome looking,
Sure.
But mechanically fairly sound. That doesn't really need a bunch of work. That should be fairly reliable. Um, so as we're talking about this, Ramblers, if you want
Well,
to take a
Smith,
moment or two.
I want to tell you about this because as I told you before the show, I was working, I was cooking dinner, I was doing some stuff. I
Mhm.
didn't necessarily get to look everything up, but I was able to look up a couple of things while you and I were talking, and I think I found a winner. It
I think I
isn't
found a winner too. And to
okay.
your point, Bruce, $3,500, 160,000 miles, Rapid
I'm
City,
a
South
bit over
Dakota.
the mileage. I'm a
It's
hair over the mileage.
well, it's just a sign of the times that it's pretty tough to find something that meets that criteria that can still hopefully be a fairly reliable vehicle
Right.
for a young driver. I'm gonna readjust the focus on my camera there because I'm giving myself a headache. There we
You
go.
yep, you are getting
I'm,
out of focus.
I'm moving
I
around too
noticed
much,
that.
and I promise it has nothing to do with what's in this beverage that I'm drinking. So, yeah, let's talk about the car. Well, do you want me to go first,
You know what?
or do you want to go first?
I will go first. I will say that this is not the perfect choice, but it is
Okay,
a choice, and it's a $3,500 is what we're shooting for. This
and
is under the
it's
price
tough.
range, but this young man is going to have to learn to wrench on this car
Oh,
because you're just going to have to. This is a 2002 Mercury Grand Marquis. It's $2,800. It's in Spearfish, 183,000 miles, so it's a bit over the
bit
mileage,
over.
but the seller says it runs good. Who the hell knows what that means? It's not bad.
Well,
And the
I
thing
tell you
is,
what.
with
Go
these
ahead. Go ahead.
Panther body vehicles, like uh, aftermarket parts are forever because who knows how many taxis they sold, cop cars they sold.
Yep.
Like, uh, there are going to be spare parts forever in a day. Like, you could get this thing back on the road for nothing and it's going to run, you can drive it away, but it's going to need some love.
Mhm. Well, you could do worse for a young driver than jumping into just a big old body on frame boat like that. I'm not so old as to remember what
I
it was
love
like
Group FBC. All
being that
three
young.
windows work.
All three
Wait
windows
a
work.
minute.
Oh, the fourth window is just permanently in place, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's not the ideal car for a young
No.
driver. It's certainly not the dream car by any means, but it is a V8 rear wheel drive. Just gonna say, some fun can be had there. There is a reason that they made the 0304 Mercury Marauder, which is a Mercury Grand Marquis with just a little bit more horsepower and cool wheels. Put some cool wheels on that, and it's all right. I mean, it's got a
And
lot of
there's a
space inside.
massive aftermarket. That's the thing, is that,
You'll be able to
like,
work on that easily. And by work on that, I mean a shop should be able to handle things without really much issue. There's a lot of
yeah.
space to work in there. That era of the 4.6 is pretty good. I mean, you're always going to have issues that crop up. You could certainly do
You're gonna deal with issues the entire time you own this car, but
well.
it's a
With
$2,800 car.
yeah.
You can wrench on some of those. The stuff that you don't feel comfortable with, you take to the mechanic. I wouldn't feel bad as a kid to say this is your first car. But granted, I have not lived in this area. I do not know how bad snow and stuff like that
Well,
gets.
that's the thing. Around Rapid City, well, I take that back because they're terrible at maintaining their roads. Something like this, you would want to put extra weight in the trunk. It's already a big car and
Okay.
it'll go through the snow pretty well. You
Oh
would want
yeah.
to have extra weight in the trunk with a set of snow tires. That would be just no question for me. That would be a
Okay.
necessity. And with that, you would probably do better than a lot of people with their all-wheel drive SUVs because
Sure.
that's still going to be a pretty stout vehicle to get through the snow. But you're also
Also,
going to have to be a
Smith,
little comfortable with car control because you will have some fishtailing going on.
Smith, if I can be a hair vulgar at the moment as a young man, this does have a robust back seat.
It does.
It does.
Okay, moving on.
Am I wrong?
Bruce, no, you're not wrong.
Okay, yeah.
Sadly,
I
we
didn't say
have
anything
not
too vulgar.
evolved.
It has
We
a
have
robust back seat.
yeah, but it's a Grand Marquis. Nobody's getting in that back seat, Bruce. Nobody's
Okay,
getting in that
fair
back seat,
enough.
Bruce.
Fair enough.
And
Good point.
I mean,
Good
honestly,
point.
the trunk is sizable too. Nobody's getting in there either. Nobody's getting in there either. Okay,
Smith,
well,
what
let
are you
me.
putting on the trunks of your vehicles? Like,
So,
are you a hitman that I don't know about?
I've ridden in trunks of Panthers
Okay.
before.
Okay.
In my
Yep.
youth, because I mean, you could pay what like $5 or so for a ticket to go to the local carnival
drive-in. It was for a
and ride
carload.
the Gravitron where it would spin you around and be like, ooh, this is.
Yeah.
Or you can just get in the trunk of one of these cars for free, sit there and let somebody do donuts and have the same experience.
Oh, see, I was thinking you meant like, because in a lot of there are still a few drive-ins across
like
America.
pile into the
I know
drive-ins.
that they exist.
Yeah, I never did. I never did
for
anything terrible like that.
Okay. You would go, it was X amount of dollars for a carload. I think when I was a kid, it was 10 or $15.
Yep.
But you would hide some people in the back seat and then, yeah.
Another
Sorry, not the
possibility.
back seat, in the trunk.
And there is a drive-in located near Rapid City, although I've just learned for reasons that aren't yet known, it's not opening up this year. Hopefully it'll open up next year because I've been there a few times and it's a great theater.
Yeah.
A valid choice certainly falls underneath the price range. 2002. Yeah. I mean, we're talking 11 years old or 21 years old. So I mean, it's an older vehicle, but they did make this up through I think 2010 or 2011. So I mean, there's still many parts available to keep these repaired.
Not to mention the Crown Vics, the Lincoln. Like there were so many of basically the identical vehicles that.
Yep. All right, let me jump over to mine here. Now I found a few cars here. I'm going to start with probably the pick that makes the most logical sense, all things being considered here.
Is it a Camry?
It is not. But it's almost as good. It is a 2007 Buick Lucerne CXL. And it's got 127,000 miles, so it's on the low end of the scale here. It is currently listed at $4,000, but I bet if you tossed them $3,500, they'd take it.
Yeah, he'd take every bit of it.
And that's the reason I bring it up. It's listed as leather, heated seats, heated steering wheel. It's got the nice sound system, new brakes. It's listed as visible exterior damage, but it runs and drives good. And I've looked through the photos, and I don't know exactly what this exterior damage is, but if we're looking for a car that's just mechanically sound, I mean, it looks pretty clean. It's luxurious. It looks like it has decent tires. And once you have like heated seats and heated steering wheel, it's got to be
on the driver's side because that's what they're hiding the most.
Well, no, because that's the driver's side right there. We're looking at.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, unless there's some hail damage, which is certainly a possibility out in that neck of the woods. Which hail damage, you go to the paintless dent guy and you get a lot of those removed. I've done that quite a bit. I mean, it's a Buick Lucerne. It's right up there with the Grand Marquis in terms of, oh great, it's the AARP car that nobody's going to care about, but it's going to be fairly inexpensive to maintain. I'm 90% sure, not 99, because I think these were offered with an optional V8. But if it's the V6, I'm pretty sure it's the 3800 V6, which is one of the most robust, legendary engines of all time that will not die.
Lasted for literally decades. Like
if it does die, you can go and fix it very, very easily. not very inexpensively, but compared to other vehicles, it will be easy to maintain.
Yes.
And I mean, it checks all the buttons. It's just not. It's not a teenage dream, right? It's a big four-door Buick with the portholes on the fenders. Um,
But
but I
I'm
mean,
gonna push
it
back
fits.
against that, because I don't know what, you're 46?
48, just turned 48.
48. Okay. I'm 36. So you and I are basically 10 years apart.
Hmm.
So I don't know what teens, quote unquote, these days like. But
I'm
like
pretty sure
to
it's not a big
me,
boat, Bruce.
but no, but you could put all of your friends in that.
Yep.
It's not going to be slow. It's not, it's not a speed
No.
vehicle, but it's not going to be slow.
No.
It's I feel like it does everything you would want it to do.
I think it would do everything you want it to do, except do 150 on the highway. Which no, you don't
But
want to.
no one wants that.
You're not going to do that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to comment on speeds I've reached in public
I
before.
know.
But
You were a
you don't.
hooligan while I
Right.
wasn't. I was a good boy.
That's the sensible choice, and it clicks all the buttons. Before you jump to your next one, Bruce, I want to
So,
share
Smith,
one more.
full disclosure, I do not have another one because
Okay,
we had to fit within Rapid
gotcha.
City, and I came up with
It's tough,
the one
man.
I found. There is
It's
not a
tough.
lot in that area.
It is tough at this price range, with the
And in that
mileage.
area, double whammy. Like,
Now,
I got nothing.
here, and I absolutely need your input on this because you have personal experience with this car. This
Oh,
is
okay.
something that I feel like could be more open to the mind of, a teenage driver who wants something a little more exciting that's still not
Show me.
necessarily going to break the bank. It's also got a manual transmission, and I am a firm believer that if you learn to drive a manual transmission, you're a better driver overall because it forces
Agreed.
you to pay more attention,
It
especially
does.
in your
Yeah.
earlier years. So with that, I present the 2006 Mini Cooper S for
Ooh,
thirty
oh.
nine 39.95. If you toss them 3,500, would they take it? I don't know, but you could try. It's got 139,000 miles of manual transmission. Runs and drives great. RPM, so the rev counter and the radio is currently not working. Selling as is. Come check it out. Custom wheels, airbox lowered. It's there could be some bigger issues here. It's probably going to be more expensive to try to repair than the Buick, but it's a little two-door Mini Cooper. I don't know what the insurance would be on
Yeah.
this. I mean, it's not super powerful. The '06 Cooper
No,
S, it's not super powerful,
it's
but
not. Wait,
I mean,
is it?
front wheel
Oh,
drive with a
okay.
manual, and I bet you could toss them 3,500 and they would take it. And I mean, look at it. It's a cool little mini, right?
Yeah, the S has always had issues though, because BMW, they licensed an engine from Chrysler that was in the Argentinian version, or the South American, just in general version of the PT Cruiser. So it's not a BMW engine, it's a Chrysler built engine.
Hmm.
And it's never it's when you start putting boost through it, things start getting iffy.
Little
So,
iffy. So I mean,
yeah, but
the rev counter and the radio not working. Do you know anything about those? Are those like
I've never
symptoms
heard of
of
those issues.
something?
No,
Okay.
I've never heard. The most common issue I know about is um the coolant tank. They were made of plastic, and the seam, however BMW or whoever made it, the seam breaks. Mine broke. They all break. Like, you have to get that replaced. Um, you know, but it would be a fun hot hatch for a kid for 35. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, It's
That's the
the
thing is that
the 16-year-old in me that remembers being 16 and wanting a cooler car is just all about this.
I agree on that point. I think,
But the adult in me is like, I mean, it's not super powerful. I bet
but
that
no,
I
it's
bet the
still a
Grand
good hot hat.
Marquis. I bet the Grand Marquis in straight line speed is almost as quick as this
Yeah,
car. So it's not going to
yeah,
be fast in a straight line, but manual little hot hatch. It'll be a nimble little go kart. You can have some fun
yeah.
with it. But the maintenance, it's probably going to be more expensive to maintain than either the
No, it's
Grand
definitely
Marquis
gonna be it's gonna be way more
or the
expensive.
Buick.
Yeah,
So I mean, you
or
have
the
that to
Buick, yeah.
consider, and I mean, there's already some issue going on with the rev counter and the radios. So there's something electrical going on. Could be more issues going on there, but I mean, I had to bring it up because you
No,
could
you're
probably get
right.
it for 3,500.
If it was me as a 16-year-old, I would want this. If it were me now as a pushing 40-year-old, I would want that Grand Marquis.
The Grand Marquis
Because
or the Buick. Yep.
or even the Buick, yeah, like,
Well,
because just, like, the idea of a fun, inexpensive, hot hatch sports car, I mean,
l-
yeah,
let
I'm
me
about
toss another let me toss
okay,
another
go for it.
curveball into this since we're getting a little long here because
Yep, we're about to finish up.
I also found this 1994 GMC pickup truck, four-wheel
Nice.
drive, 117,000
Oh,
miles, automatic transmission. It's the 5.7 liter V8. This is
oh,
going
you're
to
starting to
be.
sell me.
I mean, there are parts galore for this thing. I mean,
Of course
it's
there.
older. I mean, we're talking what 94, so we're talking 31 years old here, right?
Yeah.
Or thereabouts. I'm not doing math in my head really quick here.
No, 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 you're
Um,
fine.
obviously the exterior. I mean, I'm seeing some of the paint blown off, but you know, exterior. If that's not a huge concern, this sounds like it could be a vehicle. It's a step side, which is kind of cool. So it's the little short bed with the 5.7 liter engine. It'll actually be kind of gutsy. It says it runs great. New battery, sound system installed by Sound Pro. Interior in good condition. Paint could use an upgrade as it's been keyed on both sides and is fading.
I like
3,500.
keyed on both sides. That means someone had 2 ex-girlfriends that didn't like him.
But I mean, it's obviously got upgraded exhaust because we've got quad exhausts out the back, so it probably has that throaty V8 sound. It's technically a full size truck, but it's like old school little
Full
full size
size in
truck.
quotation marks, yeah.
It's a single cab with just a bench in there for 3 people. So you're not going to fill it up with a bunch of people unless they ride in the back, which is illegal and you shouldn't do that.
No,
But
no.
I
I
mean,
had a kid in high school that died from doing that, so do
yeah,
not do that.
do not ever do that, and don't put your dogs back there either and drive down the highways.
No, that's
You
just as bad.
idiots, you idiots.
So,
But
Smith,
3,500, 117,000 miles. I mean it, and this is right there in Rapid City. It could fit the bill. 4-wheel drive, so if you run into some snowy conditions, you can get out and
ooh,
engage 4-wheel
yeah.
drive. But otherwise, you're running 2-wheel drive on a short wheelbase truck with probably an empty bed. That would be a
Yeah.
handful. That would be a handful in a hurry if you're not careful.
Do we know, is this one you have to get out and lock the axles, or what is it just on the fly where you put it in?
I don't know. I think it would be on the fly, but
Okay.
it wasn't clear in the listing.
Okay.
And
That's fine.
I'm gonna run us through one more really quick, because this is the you really shouldn't do it unless you want to learn how to work on cars.
Oh,
And this is some of my own personality coming through, and you would need
is
to
it
know a little bit
European?
more about it. It is no, it's
It's
American
not
and
European. It's
it
American. You have to
it's
know how to work on cars. Is it
that you did let me
not a
finish.
Fiero, right?
It's American and Japanese.
It's Amer it's American and Japanese.
It's a 1997 Ford Taurus SHO. I can't I can't get away from these cars. This is the V8
Jesus,
show.
Smith.
It's $3,500. It's 148,000 miles. It fits the criteria. And
Smith,
it's a Ford Taurus,
wait,
which
wait
have
1 second.
they have a great reputation.
No. Seriously, wait 1 second. You do not have children.
No.
I do not have children. I suspect my parents are watching this show. What if I called them real quick and asked them their opinion on the 4 cars we selected?
What? A Ford Taurus is a perfectly sensible vehicle. It's the Jelly Bean Taurus, which, but it's the show. It's the 3.4 liter V8. It's the 3.4 liter V8, which, okay, it was made just for this car. If anything goes wrong with that engine, it's going to be a gazillion dollars to try to find somebody to repair it, if you could even find somebody to repair it, because few people know that this car even had a V8, never mind how to work on it. And this one, right, 148,000 miles. I will say this. I would absolutely 1,000% have to confirm that the cam shafts have been welded. These had an issues with the cam sprockets spinning on the camshafts. I've been talking this whole time while you were gone, man.
That's fine. You there? Okay.
So we're getting the opinion.
You have a pretend teenager. Okay. Okay. So you have got what? The Grand Marquis, and then the Taurus show, the GMC pickup, and what's the one I'm forgetting?
The Mini Cooper. The Mini Cooper S.
That Cooper S. Yeah. Okay. So for anyone watching right now, these are my parents on the show. You can see them right there.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Bruce.
They are the only ones among us who have had children, namely me. They are going to pick the car that not theoretical. He is actually a teenager. He should get amongst our choices. So please.
I think it's a tie between the show and the pickup truck.
The show and the pickup truck? What? Clearly, somebody has never worked on a Ford Taurus show, because as much as I want to recommend that car to my good friend in South Dakota, who I miss terribly, either he or his son would have to learn to work on it, because I promise you, nobody else will. But while it's running, you're going to have this amazing V8 sound with a front-wheel drive car that's not really fast by today's standards, but it was a quick sports sedan back in the day. But you've got the ugly jelly bean styling to deal with as well.
Yes.
And Mom, so that was my dad's opinion. Totally valid. I'm going to give my mother a chance to give her opinion. Okay.
It didn't come through the microphone very well, Bruce. What was the decision?
She would take the truck, because then her kid could haul mulch for her.
Hey, I know my friend has a newer Toyota RAV4, so he's not filling up the back with mulch. The truck would offer some cargo carrying capability.
Wait,
I can't really hear what they're doing.
I am going to hang up with them. I'm going to call you back in a little bit, because I know you want to talk to me, but I just wanted your opinion, as
we didn't start
the only parents in this conversation. So I will talk to you later. Okay. So
we didn't start a domestic dispute, did we?
You won, because
it sounded like they were arguing
the show, and they agree with you and not the Grand Marquis with me, which
didn't they buy
Grand Marquis is the best option.
Wait. Didn't they buy you a Mini Cooper?
Yeah.
They didn't recommend the Mini Cooper. Oh dear. I think we might have started a domestic issue.
It's a standard Cooper, and it's been around since.
Very true.
Delivery, I can tell you the delivery date, October 31st of 2005. And I picked it up the following weekend, whenever that would have been.
Very true. Group FBC, I'm staggered. Smith hasn't bought that for himself. I've had 13 cars, not one V8. I'm really not interested in the V8s. But when I see
And
one
then
pop
also
up,
Group FBC. So my parents, you have fans in Australia now. Hi, Bruce's parents.
well, that was an hour and a half of craziness right there, folks. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. Catch us on Motor One on YouTube, Motor One.com on Facebook, Motor One.com on Twitter. We're live every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Our audio goes up on Spotify, Google, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon, all like a dozen or so different audio platforms. That goes up every Friday. And visit us always at motor1.com. Email us, podcast at motor1.com. Talk to us about what we were mentioning earlier. Your choice of a GLC 63 SE Performance or a more modest SUV and a separate performance car. Talk to us about the cheap car challenge.
Teenager, a Mercury Grand Marquis, a what else was there?
The Mercury Grand Marquis, the Buick Lucerne.
The Buick Lucerne, which is a good choice. I agree.
The Mini Cooper S, the Ford
GMC,
Taurus Shore, or the 94 GMC truck. The Buick, I would go if you're listening, and I hope you are, because I sent you the link
Buick's
to my friend in South Dakota. The Buick's a really sensible choice.
Yeah, I can't fight that one.
And it's not necessarily glamorous, but it's going to be easy to maintain.
It's got 16-year-old car shouldn't be glamorous.
It's got gobs. So it's not necessarily true. It's got gobs of luxury. It sounds like it's a decent runner, and it may not be as glamorous as the Mini, but when you're just cruising down the highway with the heated seats on and that upgraded stereo booming, it's like everything is good in life. And you've got 3 friends in the back. Go for it.
Oh, so wait, I gotta throw up these. So Group FBC, Buick takes it for me. Group FBC, Land Yacht Tastic, and then Ted Adam Green, Mini Cooper S. So we've got a little bit of fight in the comments there, which I always love to see. So I did want to say, so a guest that we had tentatively, which I had kind of teased for next week, he is not going to be here next week. It's going to be more of an August thing just due to some issues, but we will have a different guest for next week, and that will be talking about a new American performance car, and that's as vague as I can be because I'm not sure how vague I'm allowed to be, but I can say it's American. And I know it's a performance car, and so But
tune in and find out more.
Week. Yeah,
sounds very good.
Totally. Smith, do you have anything you want to promote?
Not really. I'm still working on my Toys of the 80s articles that will hopefully be up on Motor One here before too long. Progress on that is slow. We got Stompers, Super Spin Car Wash.
If you want some other neat stuff. Editing help on that, let me know, because it's not exactly my wheelhouse, but it's not my wheelhouse either. So
I just got to get time to write them and then get some photos.
Okie doke. Very good. But with that, I think we're going to call it a show for tonight. And as always, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night, because we love the fact that anyone who watches this show spends time with us, because it's fantastic. Last week, we actually had some fantastic views, and I hope that means we're gathering some new audience members to the live show, or if not, to just the people who want to watch the show afterwards. We really love it. We really appreciate it. And with that, I think I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you folks next week.
We'll see you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.